Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm actually doing a first. I'm actually sitting in water right now. As you can see, my tripod and my feet are barely just touching the water, but my camera or my tripod is basically all the way submerged in water just about. But what I'm actually doing today is actually doing a quick tutorial on showing how to actually capture waterfalls. I actually am using my favorite setup here, my combo of the Sony 10-18mm lens attached to the Sony a6000. So what you want to do when you're photographing this is, pick a perfect location like I have right now. And the one thing that you're actually going to have to focus on the most is getting your shutter speed as slow as you can. Now in this type of lighting condition to where the sun is still fairly visible and very intense, and if you don't have a filter in your camera, you're going to run into your shutter being a little bit too fast to actually really capture the waterfall the way that you may want it. So to compensate for that, if you're like me and don't use filters, is you have to play around with your ISO and your aperture. And now you can even play with your actual exposure by dialing it down a little bit too if you're doing brackets like I am for HDR. So as you can see, I have my ISO as low as it will go on this camera, which is 100. And I have my aperture kind of high. And this is so that way I can get my shutter to be a little bit slower, but at least everything in the frame is going to be pretty much crisp. Now, I can go a little bit higher than that if I want to. And so you can see I could go to f22. But the reason I'm not doing that is because sometimes you actually go that high and it's not going to really make everything as sharp as you would think. And so kind of leaving it around this like F16 is what I like to generally go to. Now, to kind of maybe get a little bit more, I'll go to F18. So once you have all of that, you see that my shutter right now with that setup is 1/4 of a second. Now, if we actually take those frames, now you're starting to get the little drift with the water to where it's looking very smooth and silky. Now, how do you actually go about getting it a lot slower? Well, we can actually compensate by changing our exposure a little bit. So if we were to dial it up maybe right there. So you see how long that was that time. Much, much longer. Now, I actually just want to keep it here in the middle. And if I want to keep everything, balanced to where it's going to give me my +2, -2, and my 0, then I can just, mess with my aperture a little bit more. And if I were to go to f22, you see it makes it a little bit slower. So let's take those frames. Now you see how long this last one was, and it's because it's our brightest image, so that way the actual camera is going to take a little bit more time to get that actual frame or that exposure. So play around with it, kind of see what you like to use. And it's something very fun to try out, especially in situations like this where you're trying to photograph a waterfall and get that nice reflection and get the waterfall to where it's all nice and silky. So, it's nothing really to where there's a set standard as far as what you do in this situation. It's kind of basically where you play around with it to get the effect that you want. In this case, I want to keep everything, my regular +2, -2, and 0. You can dial down your exposure. You can increase your exposure if you want to have a faster shutter or if you want to have a slower shutter. It just depends on what you're trying to do. And of course, if you actually have a camera that, in this case, my ISO can only go down to 100 on this camera. If you have a camera that actually goes to ISO 50, then you might have a little bit of an edge because you can dial your camera down a little bit further. So that can even help you a little bit more in that situation. So hopefully this little quick tutorial was something useful for you all. Be sure to make sure that you check out my actual photos at the end of what I'm actually taking here today. And I'm actually back at Stone Mountain at the Gristwell Mill, which is directly behind me. You've actually seen these pictures in my videos before, and I'm probably going to have some images from that as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure you also check out my reviews and previous tutorials using the Sony a6000 and this 10-18mm lens. back here at Stone Mountain doing some photography with my friend David. You can't see him behind the bushes, but you all, I've never actually done a vlog showing these adventures and what it actually takes to get pictures. So I'm actually trying to hike a little bit under this covered bridge, or, well, it's not covered, but a bridge over a waterfall, if that makes sense. And to kind of get a picture and see what it looks like. So this is actually what it takes to get these pictures that you all see all the time on my Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is. And so let's see, let's kind of see how this image would look. Sometimes it's about trial and error, where you actually don't know what the image is going to look like until you actually set up to take one. So, yep, time to go submerged in water again. And I want to see, like, if I look down here, I can kind of see what the image looks like, but let's get it in the frame to kind of see what we're dealing with here. Okay, so this is what we got. So I need to get in a better position because I don't really like that angle. Oof. So this is why I have such a heavy-duty tripod, because as you can see, I'm once again in the water, and so am I. And yeah, let's see what we can get with this here. So this is what the adventures of photographing with me sometimes are. Let's see, let's get this untightened a little bit. I don't want it to fall, but so let's see what we get here. Now if I zoom in, I guess that kind of make a nice little picture. So let's see what we get here. So, tell the wonderful people on Facebook, YouTube, wherever this may end up at, what is it that you're doing, and what are you shooting with?
I don't want to admit it. I'm shooting with the a6000, and I kind of like it. I don't want to admit that yet.
So David recently sold all of his Nikon gear because he's totally sold on the Sony system, which is, I must say, life-changing for him, because he has swore up and down by Nikon.
12 years.
And
14 years.
And since I've known him since 2007, I believe. And so yeah, this is pretty big for him, and he's using that tiny little camera there to get his landscape images. And that camera actually has the 10 to 18 millimeter wide angle, which is, you know, it's like the favorite wide angle for Sony users that Nikon users like the 14 to 24. And then I'm using the Sony a70. We switch cameras, because usually when I'm out shooting, I actually prefer using the a6000. He likes the bigger build and, you know, better control dials, like how this camera has on the a77 Mark II versus the a6000. But he's actually growing to like the a6000. For once, we're actually outdoors, and it's actually not that freezing.